Hello and welcome to Foundation Nation. I'm your host, Matthew Cote, high school educated, master of nothing, and gifted with the knowledge of, well, a lot. Today on the podcast, we're going to talk about the ups and the downs, the ins and the outs, the crumbles and the cracks. And yes, I'm talking about your home's foundation. But we're also going to be talking about foundations of life. So join us here on this beautiful downtown Burien, Washington, as we explore with our guests foundations of your home and the foundations of life. So sit back, relax, and let's get ready to go on an adventure. Hello, today I'm speaking with Sgt Q. Thank you for taking the time to join us, Aaron. I'm very grateful that you could be here, and I guess we're going to get right into it. And today we're going to talk about some interesting concrete or foundation experiences, and of course, at the end, we're going to hear about your most precious, your most amazing, possibly even top secret foundation of life. So let's talk about some of the greatest accomplishments that you've kind of run into in your existence on this rock.
Yeah. Well, it's great to be here, Matt. I really appreciate it. You and I have been friends for a long time. So when you told me you were going to start doing a podcast, I was like, I'm all in, man. Like, I want to be part of that. That's going to be fun. So, thanks for bringing me on. It's great. Accomplishments, I've had a few accomplishments in my life. Being a Marine was one of them, but I think the accomplishment I'm the most proud of is actually just leading my family to the Lord. Yeah. I didn't grow up with church or with religion at all. And so for the better part of my life, I didn't know anything about God, but
I got to take my jacket off. Sounds like I'm wearing a wrapper.
You're going to unwrap yourself.
Bye, jacket. I was like, where is that sound coming from? Oh, that's a lot better now.
But leading my family to the Lord, I think that was probably my biggest accomplishment, and, all my sisters and, their families as well. It's been great. So there's that. And then the caveat to that is that, I've been able to pour into a lot of other families as well and in my own. And so we travel around the world part-time as missionaries, building churches and schools and orphanages all over the world. And that's very rewarding work. We did it so much that we started an organization that takes people to do the same thing. And so to see the legacy that I've been able to create in my own family and also help other people create legacies in their family, where I was just down in Mexico a few weeks ago watching 4 kids graduate discipleship training school, and every one of them, their fathers had gone through my program with Q Missions. And so watching them create a legacy for their family too has been incredibly rewarding.
That's lucky ducky. What's it like? What's the atmosphere like in Mexico these days? So when did you say? A couple of weeks ago? Yeah,
I was just there a couple of weeks ago.
Dang. Man. So what was that experience like? I mean, is it a big difference from pre-COVID to now? I mean, has anything changed?
It's not too bad. Honestly, the worst part was coming back to California. Honestly, It was terrible. Down there, restaurants are open, stores are open, like it's totally chill. They kind of have a limit of how many people they let into like the smaller stores, like the little Oxxos and the Tiendas, little things like that.
Is that like a 7-Eleven?
Yeah, like a 7-Eleven. Right. So those little like mini mart places, there's a line outside. You got to wear a mask, but it's not like it is here where if somebody sees you without a mask...
Here in the United States or here Washington?
Well, the United States.
Okay.
Just the West Coast, I should say.
West Coast, okay.
So, because some of the Midwest isn't like this, but the West Coast, California, Oregon, Washington, they're super strict. And you have this really weird kind of mentality here where people think that they have to be the police force for the world, Yeah. So if they see somebody without a mask, they want to jump on them and, like, where's your mask? And go 100% Karen on them, you know? And you don't see that down in Mexico, dude. Everybody's just chill.
They're chill.
Yeah, it was very relaxing to be there instead of being here dealing with, the people.
Yeah. So you flew down?
I flew to San Diego, and then I drive across the border.
Okay.
So the border was a lot more difficult because there's typically 2 entrances back into the country, but because of COVID, they funnel everybody into one. So usually I get a ride to the border and then I walk across, and it takes me maybe 30 minutes. Like it's no big deal. But because of COVID, and they've shut it down to just one point of entry. Now it's taking me like 2.5 hours of waiting in line. It's a nightmare.
So so you're not flying like over the border and then going deep into Mexico and then landing and driving somewhere. You're actually going through the border. Is there any signs of kind of more people parking, like camping next to the wall, preparing to go over it or under it? Or is there any signs of that have like increasing?
They're not yet. And so I know what you're talking about. There is a border surge that happens, but right now it's not going to happen. So they'll only move up to the border when they're getting ready to cross, right? So they'll be kind of tucked away, hidden in these little areas. And then all of that stuff is done by the cartels. It's very organized. And so what they'll do is they'll have 3 or 4 points where they'll just kind of like rush the border. And they'll set that up, right? And they know not everybody's going to get across, but enough of them will. And so they pay these coyotes, $3,500, $5,000, whatever, to get their opportunity to cross. So what people don't realize is you can't just cross the border. It's not like the movies where guys are like, okay, well, hey, we're just going to swim across here and get to America. Like, no, the cartels control that whole border, dude. So nobody is crossing out of Mexico into the U.S. without paying the cartel blood money. And that's something that's not talked about. You know? But that's what happens.
That's spooky.
And then what you end up seeing, because I have a lot of friends that work in law enforcement down there and they're former military, what you see a lot of times is the cartel trafficking people up here into the U.S. and then they become slaves, basically. They have to pay off that debt. So how they do that is they put them to work in these little markets or doing construction, or a lot of times those little taco trucks that you see on the streets out there in like Vegas and out in California, they're run by the cartels. And the cartel puts, you think like, oh, it's just some little mom and pop business. It's not. Those people are working that taco stand to pay off their debt to the cartels. And so the cartel basically owns them until they've paid off that $10,000 or $12,000, whatever it is.
That's so rough.
So it's funny because the news doesn't want to show that, right? Like they just say, oh, it's these poor migrants, coming across, they're trying to find a better life. But they don't want to tell you what's really happening is that they're being trafficked by human traffickers. That these people are, yes, they want to come to America, but they're having to pay their way here by paying the cartels to get them here. And so that's something the government doesn't want to talk about, something that they don't put on the news, but that's the reality of it. So when you want to support migrants coming here, you have to support legal immigration, because anybody who's coming here illegally is being trafficked by the cartel. And so then you have to really ask yourself, like, am I really in support of human trafficking at that point? Because that's what you're saying without realizing it. That's what you're supporting is human trafficking.
And you have some amount of, what is that, Chicana or what do you?
Well, if I'm a girl, sure.
Okay, what is the boy version of that?
Chicano.
I don't no hables, whatever, but you would probably, I would assume you would support people coming over in a legitimate way. And
oh yeah, 100%, and so when you talk to people like myself who are of Hispanic descent and
that's
they
what I was trying to say,
friends and family, or people who are here legally, they are the biggest opponents of illegal immigration.
That's so crazy. You wouldn't think that.
Well, because two reasons. One, we know that now it is controlled by the cartels. Back in the 80s, it was kind of hit or miss, right? Sure. But now it's controlled 100% by the cartels. And we understand that system of oppression. And so we're against it for that reason. The second reason is because it makes it really unfair for everybody else who has done it the right way and filed the paperwork, stood in line. Off. Yeah, it's like think about it like this, right? Like everybody's waiting in line, to get. You're at the fair, right?
Oh,
and everybody's standing.
I will tell you what, man. I'll go to jail for a cutter.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like everybody's sitting there waiting to get into the fair, right? Like you've got your tickets, you've been waiting. The line wraps around the block, and you're like, I want to get in there and get these corn dogs, man, because I love these corn dogs, right? Like I want to do that. But and then you got these group of 5 or 10 dudes that run up right at the entrance and jump in line, and it makes it hard on everybody else that has done the right thing, waited their turn. And so you to jump the line like that, just on a fundamental reason, everybody in the world should be against illegal immigration, because it it's those people just jumping the line, not waiting their turn like everybody else.
Yeah.
And the third reason would be it paints all the rest of us in that stigma of being illegal immigration or illegal immigrants, right?
Right.
Because when you see on the news, they don't talk about all the millions of immigrants, whether they're from south of the border or wherever, coming to America and doing it the right way. They never highlight that. They never talk about the 2 million people that immigrate to America every single year legally. They don't talk about that. You know, they just talk about the ones coming illegally and then causing crime. And
why is that? I don't understand. Why would they not? What is the benefit of doing of like starting the conversation in such a way?
I can tell you, ratings. So news organizations, they don't really tell the news anymore. When they went to the 24-hour news cycle, they were no longer giving out news. What they were doing is giving out propaganda.
So the 24-hour news cycle, I don't understand that. We went from what to that? So what was it before? So before
you would have like the 5 o'clock news, and then like the 6:30 news, and then maybe you'd have like a late night 9 o'clock news cycle, right? And that was it.
That was it.
In the morning, you would get news for like maybe an hour, which would be basically just be traffic.
Okay.
And so that's what it was, right? And if you look at local news stations, you kind of see that old version. That's all it was. When you got cable and they went to like the CNN, this 24-hour news cycle where you can turn on the news and it's always on. A lot of times they replay the same news story, but what they need ratings, because the higher ratings they get, the more they can charge advertisers to advertise.
Okay.
And so for them, it's a money-making scheme. So they want to sensationalize stories. They want to put out stories that are going to get the most clicks. They want to put out stories that are going to get people to tune in and watch the most, because the higher ratings means they can charge more for that advertising space.
All right.
So,
I'm with you.
So here's the thing. Psychologically, I've done a tremendous amount of research on the brain and how it operates because of my work with PTSD. And so when you start doing this research, your eyes start getting open to all these other things in the world, man. It's so wild. So check this out. In our brain, we have what's called the negative bias. And so the negative bias, it's a clinical term, and they've done a tremendous amount of research on this. And basically what it shows is that if you and I have a negative interaction, it's going to take 5 or 6 positive interactions just for you and me to get back to normal, not even to start building relationship. Because our brain is designed to weigh a negative experience higher than a positive one. And it's a survival instinct. That's how God created us. Think about it. Back when we were hunters and gatherers, right? And we're trying to find food and we're foraging and we're like, oh, hey, there's these pink berries. And we eat them and we get sick and we're like, oh, next time we go to that pink berry.
Big time not eating it.
I'm not eating that thing.
Yeah.
So it's a survival instinct. And so more recently, if people are like, it doesn't make sense, think about it like this. Think about the first time that you got really sick on an alcohol, right? So what was that alcohol for you? Tequila, right? And so probably for the longest time, anytime that somebody had tequila, you smelled tequila, you had this visceral reaction, like your stomach kind of cramped up and you felt sick, like, oh.
Well, I didn't know there was a worm in this damn thing. I never heard about the whole worm situation. I graduated from high school, went to buddy's house, and I was drinking it, and I did not see the worm. And all of a sudden, that thing went shooting down I lost it. Everything.
So that's the negative bias, right? It's
still holding strong today. I don't like tequila super much.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's because you had a really negative experience.
Jeez, man, who's figuring this shit out?
So the scientists, I just read their books and I read their manuals and the different stuff that they publish.
Spooky, because it's in our cell phones now, right?
That's right. And so think about this now. Right now we have a propensity to look for more negative experiences. So our brain also wants to catalog things. It wants to find like items. So I tell people, what you look for, you're going to find more of, right? So if you're looking at these negative news stories, you're conditioning your brain to find more of them. Okay. And so the brain says, oh, okay, you want negative news stories? Let me try and find more negativity for you to feed it to you, which it's like compound interest. And so when you look at this, you start to see how advertising is done. You start to see how news cycles run with all these negative stories. Politicians use it all the time, right? They don't really talk about what they're going to do. They talk about all the deficiencies of their opponent. So look at when people do debates, look at people when they are doing their attack ads, they call them attack ads, or slinging mud, because they know that that negative thing that you're saying about that opponent is going to stick in your mind far easier than anything positive they say about themselves. So they would have to tell you 5 or 6 positive things that they're going to do, or they could tell you one negative thing about their opponent.
Right.
And so for that reason, you start to see it's basically just manipulation, using our mind to manipulate us. And so once you understand that, and you understand and have that knowledge, it's much easier to reroute your brain system around it. So another great example would be Google Analytics. So think about like Facebook or Google, any of those search platforms, right? Say you're like, it's getting to be spring, I'm going to look for a barbecue. So you look up a Traeger barbecue, boom. All of a sudden you're getting ads everywhere for Traeger barbecues, right? It's when you pull up your email, it's on the right side. It's on your Facebook. It's going to pop up these little suggested ads. You know, when you go onto sites like Let Go or sites like Offer Up, right? Secondary markets. All of the ad space on there is going to be different barbecues, mainly Traeger. But you know, Pit Boss and all these other guys hit it up too, because they want your buying dollars as well.
Right.
So think about that. You know, now that I'm dumping this knowledge on people, they're going to be tripping. They're going to be like, whoa, like this is really
creepy.
happening.
Creep Station 5000.
Yeah. And so that's how your brain works, just like that, right? Your brain works that same way. It starts to look for things that it thinks are valuable to you. So think about it like this. Another great example, and I could give you examples all day. This would be the last one, but think about the last car that you just bought.
Sure.
So like I use the example like a red Nissan pickup truck, right? You bought this red Nissan pickup truck. I know, I drive a big gray Dodge. So, okay, let's say, so my big 2500 diesel Dodge. Like I buy this thing, right? And then all of a sudden I'm driving around. I'm like, oh, wow, there's another Dodge right there. Oh, there's another gray Dodge.
Yeah, and what the hell? You're right.
Yeah. Like,
as soon as I never saw that vehicle before, and then you start driving it, and it's like, these things are everywhere.
Yeah, they're everywhere. And you're like, did everybody just buy this thing? No, they have always been there. You didn't notice them. And the reason you didn't notice them is because your brain did not think that was valuable information to show you. But since you bought one, it assigned value. Your brain assigned value to that truck and said, this is valuable. Aaron spent a lot of money on this truck. It's valuable to him. So I'm going to show him other trucks just like it, because my brain assigned a value to it. And so it starts to show me those things in my environment.
Completely amazing.
So I tell people, what you look for, you will find more of. So we all know that negative person in the office, right? That no matter what, nothing is ever their fault. They're always in some sort of
Why are they always called
calamity.
Nancy?
Yeah, right.
Negative Nancy.
Negative Nancy's. And so we know these people, and they're that way because they continue to look for those things.
Sure.
So if you're having a bad day, if you're struggling, like, oh man, this is, I've had a series of some pretty unfortunate circumstances today.
Yeah.
You have to make the conscious decision to say, I'm not going to continue down that rabbit hole. I'm going to choose to look for positive things. And the best way to do that is find somebody you can go help. That is the quickest way to change your mindset out of that negative mindset to a more positive one, that you have to go and choose to do something different. Because you can, as soon as that thought comes in, you have to just be like, nope, not gonna go down that negative road. I'm gonna call somebody and encourage them. I'm gonna call a business owner that I know and be like, hey man, I saw, that you just bought that new office building, man. It's looking sharp. I drove by it the other day. Good job.
Yeah.
You do that 2 or 3 times, and your brain says, oh, okay, he wants to assign value to giving compliments to people. Mm-hmm. And then you just start doing it automatically. And before you know it, your mood changes. You will actually have physiological changes in your body as well.
Like, will hair start growing on my damn head?
I don't think so. I think you're too far gone on that.
All right, dude, I'm so glad you're here. I'm serious. I'm like, damn, man. I know your roof fell in and shit, but I'm glad you made it. I'm glad you made it, dude. I wanted to tell everyone, or maybe you could tell everyone, kind of where we're sitting, what we're seeing. Because there's some background noise popping up here and there, and maybe you could let them know what's up.
Yeah, so this is actually one of the coolest podcasts that I've ever done. So I've done a few. I'm definitely not like a professional, but I've probably got about 20 of them under my belt in the last couple years. And this is honestly the best location. So right now we are in the Pacific Northwest. We are downtown Burien, right across from the library. There are tons of little shops and restaurants like Aussie Pico, which if you've never been to Aussie Pico, free plug for them because it is great.
Yeah, little pies of love.
Little meat pies of love, dude, is so good. If I worked here, Matt, I'd probably be 300 pounds because I'd be there every day.
Yeah, no, there's barbecue chicken. That's all I'm saying.
It's so good.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Well, the Point was a restaurant just right next to them. They closed for a bit, but they're open back up.
Okay.
So they got some good food too.
Yeah. So, I mean, you see a lot of people just walking by, parking their cars. And we got this huge glass window in front of us that runs the length of this whole building. And so people are driving by. There's a little park across the street. In the summertime, they will have like a little farmer's market over here. So there's just tons of pedestrian traffic that walk by. So yeah, all those little noises you guys are hearing are people just, opening and closing their car doors and parking. And so we get to sit here and have a conversation and just people watch. And it's actually really cool. Today is a rare day for winter in the Northwest. It is not raining or snowing. It's clear. It's dry, a little cold, but it's for Pacific Northwest. Like this is an epic day. This is top 10% day for
really
Pacific Northwest.
Amazing day. Totally amazing day. Jay. Yeah. So Jay, I was talking to Jay the other day, and he said, when he first moved here, we were talking about the weather because the day he was here, when I was doing a podcast with him, he said, I said we were talking about the weather, and then all of a sudden I said, "Oh God damn it, you're right. It was sunny. There was 2 feet of snow piled up outside." And then 5 minutes later, it started raining. And he said, well, when I moved up here, somebody told me if you can see Mount Rainier, it's going to rain. And if you can't see Mount Rainier, it's going to rain. And I just loved that. I just totally, it was like, you got it, baby.
Man.
Well, something I wanted to ask you when you were talking about the borders and stuff is a buddy of mine just went over there for a vacation. And he was telling me, I was like, hey, I was just joking around. I don't know shit about the cartel. I've never really witnessed anything negative over there, except one time when I was there in high school. I had somebody rip a mirror off the side and take off running with it, but that was literally it as far as negative. It was a Jeep mirror, it was no big deal. But I was joking with him. I was like, watch out for the cartel, man, And so anyway, he comes back and and I say, so how was it? And he goes, Avocado Wars.
Yep.
So tell me about this.
Yes.
So that's all I know. What is he talking about?
So it didn't start with the avocado.
It didn't start with the avocado.
It actually started with the limes.
Okay, the limes.
The limes.
The limes in the lime. Okay.
So limes, and now it's moved into avocado. So the cartel really is a separate government, basically in Mexico.
Okay.
And so the cartel, they pretty much run everything.
Okay.
And so what they do is they try and make money by squeezing everybody. So they squeeze the politicians, they squeeze people trying to cross the border, they run all of the drugs, they run all of the prostitution. And so usually they run the cartel. Think about it, it's like the mob, right? But like the mob was here in the US, but they're way more powerful in Mexico than the mob ever was here. The mob kind of kept things underground. They don't care. So any journalist that reports on cartel activity, they kill them. Anybody who speaks out against them, as far as politicians go, they kill them. And so with the limes and avocados, what happens is that these farmers, they have these avocado fields and these lime fields, and typically everybody in the area will pick all the limes or avocados, and then they will sell them at one price to a buyer, and then the buyer will truck them into the U.S., and then that's how you and me get our avocados and our limes. And so we don't really think about that when we go to the store.
No. Well, you know what I thought about, what popped in my mind was I do remember, when I was younger, the avocados were not always there. They were sometimes in the store and sometimes not. And now they're always there. There's always avocados there.
Right.
So why would there be a war? The shit is there all the time. I don't get it.
Well, so they call it a war, but really it's not a war because it's slavery.
Avocado slavery.
Because here's what's happening. What they'll do is they basically tax everybody in the process of bringing the avocado across the border.
Man.
So they cartel, and it depends. Sometimes they will just make the farmer pay a fee, make the guy driving a truck pay a fee, basically to bring that stuff to America. So everybody's going to get paid, or everybody's going to have to pay the cartel to transport that stuff out of America. But what they've been doing recently, this is why they're calling it the war, because people are starting to take over or starting to fight back, because now the cartels, that's not enough. Now they're trying to take over entire farms and saying, well, this is our farm now, and you're going to work for us, and you're going to produce this amount.
Could you imagine?
If you don't, we'll kill you.
Could you imagine?
That's exactly what's
Somebody
happening.
rolling up to your house, saying, that's intense.
And so what
that wouldn't work for me, just saying.
Well, it wouldn't work here in America because we got a lot of guns, bro.
Yeah,
but guns are illegal for people to have in Mexico.
They're illegal? Mm-hmm. I didn't know that.
So you can get a firearm in Mexico, but you have to have it at your house. You have to pay a fee to the government, and you have to be part of a private gun club. Those are the rules.
Money.
Right? And you can't have the weapons that we have here, right? Like you can have a single shot shotgun. And, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like you can't have. So the regular people are just totally outgunned when it comes to trying to protect their land.
Sure.
And so that's what the cartel does. That's why they call it the war, because these people these cartels are going in and they're squeezing the avocado farmers and the lime farmers. And you guys can go on Netflix, man, and check it out. Like there's whole documentaries on this where they talk to these families who've been totally murdered, or they'll leave one family member alive, and you're working the farm, and they'll bring in labor, right? But it's still that guy's farm. Technically, but the cartel runs it.
Does the quality of the avocado, is it still a good quality? Has it gotten not good or anything like that? Or?
No, I don't think that's really suffered the quality, but the more educated consumer doesn't purchase them. Right? Like, trust me, bro, I love lime and avocado. I was just making some huge avocado dip for a party not too long ago. I got invited to a going away party, and so they asked me to make guacamole, and so that's what I was doing. But
that's funny that I asked.
Yeah, but I normally don't purchase them, limes and avocados, just because I understand where it comes from. And if you go to some of these smaller independent restaurants, like there's some really good Mexican restaurants in Kent, and you're like, hey, can I get lime and avocado? And we won't, because they understand.
They know what's going
happening.
On. It's like a blood avocado right now.
That's right.
Blood
That's exactly what it is. So you guys can look it up on Google. There's a great Netflix documentary on it that shows more in depth.
So what do you think? We want to get a safe avocado. What would be the route these days?
There isn't one.
Shut up.
No.
Dang, man.
No.
All right. Well, you know what? Eat corn. We got a lot of that.
Yeah. I mean, you just got to think about those things. Like, I'm not on this bandwagon of like, no, you shouldn't eat avocados, right?
Just be mindful, right?
Just be mindful and understand, like, this is what's happening.
You want somebody rolling up on your property and taking all your stuff,
Right. When people get...
That's rough. Jeez.
When people get angry because somebody's not wearing a mask, you could kill us, you're not wearing a mask. Yeah. I'm like, well, let me tell you a story.
Let me tell you about the avocados, man.
That's right. Let me tell you what, our people are like, oh, they took my post down on Facebook. This is oppression. I'm like, bro.
Let me tell you about avocados, man.
Let me tell you about what a real oppression looks like.
Yeah,
like,
no, seriously.
This ain't it, bro.
Kiss your floor every day. You have no idea, sir.
That's right.
Well, why don't you tell me a little bit about what's going on in your life? What's important? What are your, where are you in your multiple CEO seats? What do you got? Technology, CEO. You got a CEO to serve and save veterans. You clean, I don't know, half of North America. You got a lot of stuff going on. I mean, tell me a little bit about what's been going on what are the priorities in your mind right now? Where are you at?
Yeah, man. So yeah, I do. I run 3, I guess 4 companies right now that I own and run. But what's most pressing for me right now?
Yeah, what do you got?
Getting my freaking house fixed, bro.
That's crazy. So we got to tell everybody a little bit about that. The snow went up.
Yeah,
where your house was.
I'm like homeless again.
Back at it.
It's so funny. Before I started my first company, I was actually homeless. And so that's another funny story. But this one right here, I was in Mexico, like I was saying, for those few days, watching those kids graduate, because I thought it was important that I went down there and saw them. And when I came home, there was that huge snowstorm that happened last week, right? Or 10 days ago, whatever.
Yeah.
And so
we got 10 inches in about 10 hours.
Yeah. So it
was awesome.
I live at about 1,300 feet elevation. So I probably got double that.
Wow. 20 inches.
But here's the thing. Yeah, definitely got 20, maybe even 3 feet, I mean, in some spots. Because here's what happened. The wind was blowing so hard. It's like 80 miles an hour. So there were parts of my lawn that were windswept where there was no snow, just kind of like a light dusting. And then like up against my house, there's like 3.5, 4 feet.
Dude,
so
that is
wild.
Cool. No, I mean, that's weird.
I don't know.
It must have been tearing it up. Did they lose power over there?
Oh yeah, we lost power for days.
Dang.
But I mean, I got a generator wired in, so I'm fine. But so we get home and we're on the plane and Holly's like, oh, it snowed a lot. I'm like, oh, great. This is going to be terrible. Just I'm to dig myself into my house, And she's like, oh, people are getting snow in their attics. And I'm like, no, that doesn't happen. I'm like, something must have happened to their roof. Their roof must have been damaged. She's like, no. People are saying the roof is fine, but there's snow inside. I'm like, that literally can't happen. Like, that's not even possible. And she's like, well, when you get home, you better check. And I'm like, yeah, right, whatever. So I'm home. And I think I got home that evening and I didn't check anything. The next day, Holly's like, all right, go check the attic and see if there's any snow up there. I'm like, she's like, all these people in Ravensdale have got snow in their attic. I'm like, whatever. Like, we're not going to have snow. I crawl up in there, bro, foot of snow in my freaking...
Come on, that's so insane.
Dude, it's
like Snowman walked in through the front door and took a shit up there.
Yeah, it's crazy because here's the thing. It wasn't like the whole roof. So it was along the ridge cap, which is the top of the roof, the precipice of the roof. In the newer homes, they have what's called a vent cap. Mm-hmm. So it's just like piece of plastic that's up there that is corrugated, almost like, the little political signs that people put out on their lawns. Yep. It's that kind of material, but it runs the whole length of the house. And
it made it in that.
Over that. Right. So that's designed. So there's those holes right there. And then there's holes on the bottom. They call them like bird boxes where it's wired off so birds can't crawl in there, but they're little holes. And so air can go up in there. And then as it heats, it rises, it goes out. And so it's designed to keep your roof in good shape. Right. So that moisture doesn't trap in there and it doesn't get musty and moldy, right? It's designed to be good for the roof. But because the winds were so high and the snow was so light, it blew snow into those tiny little ridge cap crevices. And when it did that, so inside of your roof, you have this ridge cap. It's that little plastic piece. And so those little tiny pieces of snow were blowing across my roof into that ridge cap vent and then down. So the whole length of my roof, I had 8 to 10 inches of snow, right? Like in a line all the way down. And then every one of those little holes on the outside of my house for ventilation, it blew snow under the eave and into that as well. Come on. So I had these like 3 main areas that were just covered in snow. Likey. Bro, like my whole house had to be redone. So it's every
ridiculous,
inch of my ceiling, 2,000 square feet of ceiling is gone.
How was the insulation?
Oh, insulation was smoked. Like they had to take it all out. It was soaking wet. They had to take all of my insulation out. They had to cut my entire roof out, which means I had to move my entire house.
Wait, the roof or the lid?
The lid, sorry.
Oh, okay, the sheetrock lid.
The sheetrock lid had to all be removed. But I had to remove everything out of my house so they could do all this demo work.
Dang.
So I had to rent these pods, move all my stuff out. So I'm living in my van right now. Dang. I'm currently living in my van.
Yeah.
So it's crazy. So they had to gut that. And snow actually blew in. You have that little weather stripping under your door? Yeah. It blew in there. And so it was stacked like 2 or 3 inches inside my house, and so that damaged my hardwood floor. So they've got to peel out parts of my hardwood floors. So it's horrible. They're telling me like 4 months before I'm going to be back to normal.
4 months.
Oh my gosh, I'll be living in my van for the next 4 months.
Jeez, man. Well, for the next 4 months, you can go travel around and in your van and say hi to everyone.
Yeah. And so that's something that we're thinking about doing is just doing some more travel. But the other part of it is I kind of have to be around for the contractors too. So I can't
kind of tell them what's up.
Yeah, I can't boogie too far, because I've got to be able to manage that project. Otherwise, who knows what's going to happen?
Yeah. You get pink walls and.
Yeah. So that's the most pressing thing. But as far as my business goes, so like I said, I own a couple of businesses. I started Reliable Commercial Cleaning, and that was about 14 years ago when I was looking at being homeless again. So I spent a couple times being homeless, once as a kid. And then once when I came back from Iraq, I ended up being homeless too, living in my car, just kind of bouncing around. And then I wasn't managing my mental health well at all. I was struggling with PTSD and depression and suicidal ideations. And so it was just terrible. I was not managing my mental health. And the VA was terrible. It's gotten better, but it's still not great. I was one of those guys that slipped through the cracks, and only by the grace of God, I'm still here. I didn't commit suicide, but I was living in Auburn, and I was looking at being homeless again for the third time. And I had lost my job. I got fired because my mental health wasn't doing well. And so I went back to what I knew. I knew how to clean from being in the military.
Right.
So I started a little janitorial company. It was just me and one other guy, and we were just doing little subcontract work for some of the bigger guys like ABM and SBM and Allied, and we were just getting a little subcontract work, that they didn't want to do. And that turned into full service janitorial. And now 14 years later, I've got over 100 employees here in the Puget Sound. And, I've got 2 branches, and we do a lot of medical, like Museum of Flight. They're one of our contracts.
Dang,
and so
the big honcho in the house.
Yeah, it's kind of cool.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude.
So I spend a lot of my time. I don't do the day-to-day operations anymore. I've hired a guy, Kerry Wheeler, who is phenomenal at the operations part. And so he does that for me. And I focus more on professional development of my leadership team. And so I work with my leadership team about big picture things and, how do we treat our employees and how do we talk to people and how do we lead with a servant's heart. And so that has been a huge transition for my company. We have seen since we started doing that, which was about 2.5 years ago, we've been able to open a second branch because my leadership team has gotten so much stronger. We have far less turnover than we ever did before. So if you're a business owner and you're looking at and you're listening to this, I'm going to tell you right now, the best thing you can do is to stop trying to grow your business and start trying to grow your people.
Yeah.
And they will grow your business, man. I guarantee it.
Yeah.
Invest in your people. And what I hear from business owners all the time is like, well, what if I invest in this person and then they leave? I say, well, that's a risk. But what if you don't invest in them and they stay?
Yeah.
Far more detrimental.
Come on, man.
So
delegate and elevate.
Yeah, man. You got to invest in your people, trust them, and then
I agree.
It just works every single time. So that's what I do with RCC now. And so I have that. I own a couple pieces of commercial property. So I'm a landlord for commercial space.
Are you a slumlord or are you a landlord?
No. So I just do commercial now. I don't do any residential. I did residential for a while. It's not for me. It's not for me. I'm just not, I'm not calibrated for that. For dealing with
well, lucky you. Right now is not a good time to be a landlord. Anywhere in this state.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I had bought an apartment complex and flipped it, and I was doing really well with it. And then God called me to start building these apps and helping veterans. So I ended up selling the apartment complex, which was my retirement, right? I was going to continue to buy properties and then retire and just live off of that as my retirement. But God called me to this work with veterans. So I sold that apartment complex, bought a commercial building in downtown Auburn. And it was an old bookstore, so the old Comstock bookstore. It's kind of a staple in Auburn. And the owner had passed away, and his wife took it over, and it was just too much for her. She was in her 80s. And so she sold the building to me and the books to another guy, and we turned it into our headquarters. So I run my janitorial company out of there too, but it just takes up a small portion. The majority of it we use for the ministry, helping veterans who are struggling with PTSD, which is the second thing that I run. I'm the founder. In nonprofit world, they don't really call you the CEO. I'm the founder of Q Missions, but really it's the same thing. So Q Missions is an award-winning nonprofit that helps veterans overcome trauma. So we've received a couple different awards from the Department of Veterans Affairs. And a couple years ago, I was named Seattle's Hometown Hero.
Hometown Hero.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah.
So make that check out to, no, I'm just kidding.
That's so awesome, Hometown Hero.
It is kind of cool.
That is so cool.
It is really cool.
Hero's a big word. It is, man.
So I work a lot with veterans, and I teach them this process called Healing Thru Service. And so I actually wrote a book about it. You can find it on Amazon. It's Healing Thru Service, and it just details out the program that
I've read that book a few times. I mean, I love it.
Oh, thanks,
I love
man.
it. Yeah, I'll get you the edited version shortly. There's a whole bunch. There's so many perfect spots for jokes. You got to insert the jokes. I got like 14 jokes you need to insert in there.
I'll make that Matt's cut.
Yeah, Matt's cut. Yeah. Dude, it was like, I was like, and why didn't you have that joke right there?
Oh, it's funny.
But great book.
So yeah, the book is based on the award-winning program that I run. And so I wrote the book so that I can't touch everybody, right? And so there were far more people that wanted to go on these trips than I just had funding to be able to bring. And I was getting a lot of civilians coming to me saying, hey, I've heard about your program. It helped my cousin. Like, can I go through it? And I was like, no, because my nonprofit is set up for just veterans. So I raise funds to take veterans on these trips. I can't really bring civilians. So I would be violating the trust of my donors, right? Because they donate because it's veteran specific. So sure. I wrote the book, and that way anybody can pick up the book, read through it, and literally go through the same program that the veterans do.
That's great.
And at the end, so in Mexico, we're building a home for a homeless family. And that's how I show them that there's healing through serving others. That's what we do. But in the book, I challenge people to find something in their own communities that they can go be a part of. You know, there's tons of volunteer opportunities in your local communities that
in the
you can
United
go and
States.
give back. Oh yeah, absolutely. And so when I take people to Mexico and they go through this program, it's not a one and done. So they don't do it and then it's over. When they come home, I help them get plugged into other nonprofits where they can continue to serve their communities and rebuild their communities.
Right.
And to see what these guys do, man, it is so cool. I've got a guy in Oregon right now who went through my program. His daughter is actually going through discipleship training school right now, and he bought this old building. So I knew this guy when we were kids, and we went to high school in Coos Bay, Oregon. And there's this little market as you leave North Bend, which is the sister city. It's called Ashworth's Market. And it's just kind of a thing. Like before you would leave town, you'd stop there and grab a couple Cokes or a candy bar. Like it was just like that market, right? That you just, everybody has one.
Everybody hits.
Yeah, absolutely. Grab some burritos, like whatever. And so right across from there are these two houses that are just totally tore down, you know, just like not habitable, really terrible condition. And they'd been like that since we were in high school. So here's this guy, Pat, he goes through my program and he wants to start helping veterans. So he starts his own nonprofit and that we helped him put together, helping the aging veteran population do repairs on their house. And so he's doing that. He's doing a really good job. And he says, you know, I really want to start housing homeless veterans. How do I do that? And so we talked about it and created a plan. And then next thing I know, this guy calls me and says, hey, you remember that house across from Ashworth's? I bought it and I'm going to turn it into veteran housing. And my first reaction was, oh God, I hope you didn't do that.
Yeah.
Right? Because I know the condition of this house. I'm like, couldn't you have found a easier house to turn? But he did it, man. Like last week was his grand opening. He got a contract with the government to house veterans. So now he's not getting paid because he's like me. He's the founder, and he chooses not to take a paycheck like I do.
Right.
But he has staff that he has to pay, you know, to answer phones, to, you know, social workers, to, you know, vet the veterans as they come in and then help them get into job placement and all that stuff, right? So he's got a staff that he has to pay. So the government, the contract he has with Oregon government is to help pay for that whole program. But he did it, man.
That's like, awesome.
He's housing homeless veterans.
I remember when he was talking about that. That was a long time ago.
Right? And
was it, what did he, Brian's house?
Brian's home.
Brian's home.
So Brian's home is what it's called. And
yeah, that's awesome, dude. Good for him.
Yeah, so Brian Bertrand, it's named after Brian Bertrand. So Brian Bertrand was a good friend of ours.
Okay.
And he and I, all three of us, Pat and myself and Brian, we all graduated in 97. We all went to high school together. And we were all friends. And Pat and I joined the military at the same time. And it was a year later that Brian decided to join the Marine Corps with us. I remember I was home on leave or something and I was hanging out with him and he's just like, man, I'm struggling here in college. Like, I just can't, I'm getting in trouble. Like, I don't know what to do. And I said, dude, join the Marines. Like, we're doing great. And so he did. And he served under me for a little bit when we were in the Marine Corps. And then I lost touch with him. But he ended up dying in Afghanistan. He was actually the first casualty from Oregon on the War on Terror. So his KC-130 went down in Afghanistan, and him and his whole crew perished. And so it was a huge hit to the community and to me personally too. I mean, when that happened, I volunteered to go to Iraq, in 2003 when that kicked off. I felt like I owed it to him. So I volunteered to go. And so that's the home, the namesake is for Brian Bertrand, our friend who died in Afghanistan. So
that's
pretty cool. And
that's a great story.
His parents actually sit on the board for that nonprofit. And so it's really cool just to see how Pat has gone through the program and then taken it and made it his own. And he's rebuilding his community and pouring in. I mean, that's what it's all about. A lot of times people get into this life and they just want to do whatever they can for themselves and get as much as they can for themselves. Yeah. But I love it when I see people who they put service over self, and because that's what's close to my heart is they want to help people. And so when I see other people doing it, man, it just makes me cheer like, yeah, I'm not the only one out here doing this stuff, And so to see him do that in our hometown and rebuild it, it's phenomenal, man. And I got to give the guy props. It looked like a really tough road, when he first told me about it, but he pulled it off, man. Yeah. So kudos to him. So if you're down in Coos Bay, Oregon area, you can go check out Brian's home, check out Operation Rebuild Hope. That's the nonprofit. And it's really cool. So if you're down there, go check that out. If you want to throw some money toward him, man, definitely do it. If you got a heart for housing homeless veterans, like Pat Wright, that's the guy who's got it going on, man. He's doing good things out there. And because he was so successful with this, he's looking at purchasing the little hotel right next door to make it transitional housing. Like he didn't stop at that one. Yeah. Like he's like, nope, I'm on to the next one. Like, let's build the next one. Yeah. I'm like, oh my gosh, dude, like take a breath. Just
go jet skiing or something, man. Yeah,
like take a breath and just be like, okay, cool. Recognize this accomplishment. But he's like, I'm already on to the next one, dude. Yeah. So he's like me. We feel like we only have a certain number of days on this earth. Yeah. And so we've got to try and help as many people as we can with the time we got here.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Elon Musk even operates under the same ideas, Get to Mars, do whatever he's got to do to get to his goal as fast as he can. All right, well, shoot, I could honestly talk to you for days and days and days, but our time is coming close. And so finally, I wanted to see if you wanted to share with us your, wait for it, foundation of life.
Yes. So my foundation of life, I really operate my life on three really simple principles or rules, if you want to call them that, which is my foundation is always on Christ. But three rules that I have for myself is to be honorable in all things. So number one is to be honorable in all things. Number two is to surround yourself with people of high integrity. And number three is that if anybody asks you to violate rule number one, refer to rule number two.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And
keep so it clean.
That's right. That's the foundation that I base almost every decision on. Yeah. Are those three things, and it's really kept me out of a lot of trouble. It's kept me moving forward. One of the things that I'm working on right now is a suicide prevention app. And so,
and what is that app called?
So the app is called Q Actual. So Q and then Actual. You can also look up Operation Pop Smoke, or you can look up We Care Empowered. So they're the same app. They're just branded different for different demographics. And so my whole goal with that is to help prevent suicide. We've seen 20% increase in suicides in every demographic since COVID hit. And so people are looking for solutions. And this is a very, very viable solution. So a medical group out of North Carolina, they hit us up because they saw what we were doing with this app with veterans, and they asked us to build one for their hospital staff, which we did. And it was such a success there that they wanted to put it into clinical trials. So last month, we started a clinical trial. So it's going to be going through this clinical trial for about 10 months. So we'll have some quantifiable data behind it, showcasing its effectiveness. And so hopefully by the end of 2021, early 2022, anytime somebody walks into a emergency room with suicidal ideations, they'll be able to give them an app that will help them overcome those suicidal ideations. And like I said, I've done a lot of research on the brain about how it works. And so there's a ton of research that went into how this works and why it's effective, which you guys can look all that stuff up. And maybe I can come on another podcast and we can just unpack that, because that is just, that's a whole hour in itself.
That's what do you call it? That's a CEO of a tech company stuff right there.
Yes. And so,
some cutting edge shit going on now.
Yeah. Now I'm so that's the other business is the technology company.
Do you feel like you learned another language and you kind of had like this epiphany in your brain? Like you just opened this door of like, whoa, man, this is big. Did you have something like that happen?
Yeah, so it's crazy. So actually how this happened is I was actually writing the book. I was doing research for my book. And so I was looking at all these different medical studies and look at this quantifiable data. And I had a veteran in my organization who was feeling suicidal. And so we ended up having to take him to the hospital, put him on a 72-hour mandatory psychiatric hold. And I had come home and I was looking at all these papers and research studies, and I was just like, God, I don't understand. How do I help these guys with the suicidal ideations? Like I had felt them myself and I just didn't know, like my program works, but it has to become a lifestyle. I needed an immediate tool to help people not commit suicide. And so I had all the research in front of me. I knew how the brain operated. I knew that when somebody was going through a mental health crisis, that parts of their frontal lobe aren't working. And so it was kind of like trying to build a puzzle, but you didn't have the box. So you didn't know what it was supposed to look like. You just had all the pieces. And so I remember I prayed that night. I was like, God, can you help me just understand how to do this, how to fix this? The next morning I woke up, and I'm not kidding you, Matt, I had these visions burned into my brain. Like I can still see them now. And so I grabbed a piece of paper and I sketched them out, these like scenes. And what I ended up with was what they call a storyboard. And so I called a buddy of mine, Bo Shevasu. He is the founder of Knox Studio. It's a nonprofit video studio. And I said, hey man, we got to shoot this video. And we did. We shot this video exactly to the images that I had seen in my head. And so I was like super involved in the specific camera angles and what people had to wear and what they were doing. Like everything had to be exactly in my vision. And it wasn't until the first time that I saw the video completed that I fully understood how to build the app. And so every piece of the app, every component that we put in there is backed by clinical research, and those components are in that video.
That's awesome.
So that's how it was created.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I mean, it's, it sounds like a Walt Disney movie. Dreams do really come true.
Yeah, I'm
really starting to miss Disney, man. I need to get out of town.
It's
I gotta
funny.
Get out of here.
It's funny. I tell people that story, and I always know if they're a Christian or not. Because if they're a Christian, they lean in a little bit, and if they're not, they kind of lean back. Like, is this dude nuts? Right? Like,
sounds
this
awesome.
guy needs medication.
Like, it sounds amazing. I'm very thankful. I just want to say thank you, Aaron, for your time and your amazing words, and and thanks for sharing your foundation of life, and, my advice to you is just keep showing up.
Yeah.
I mean, it's 90% of everything, just keep showing up. And so this podcast is proudly sponsored by MetVay Foundation Repair, and I want to thank you for joining us at the Foundation Station. Please like, subscribe, send suggestions for episodes. You can find us at the Foundation Station or anywhere you find your podcasts, and we'll catch you on the flip side.
Thank you for listening to Foundation Nation. You can find us anywhere podcasts are available. If you would like to hear more conversations like this, please subscribe to Foundation Nation. And if you have any comments or suggestions on future topics or guests, just let us know. Please join us next time as we continue to search for the foundations of life.